Debates are a natural part of the political process. Good politicians understand that and are not afraid to be challenged and questioned. Miami-Dade Mayor Carlos Gimenez used to hold that view. I moderated debates with him during his last 2 runs for mayor. But now that he is running for Congress as a Republican, he not only refuses to come on here and debate his opponent, Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Murkowski-Powell, he won't even come on to answer questions. For at least a year, we have tried to get Gimenez on this show, but he doesn't think you deserve to hear from him. That's a shame. But that won't keep us from covering the race. Here now is a conversation I recently had with Mukrisel Powell.
It seems as if Carlos Gimenez does not want to come on here and debate with you. I know that you haven't had very many debates, maybe a couple of forums. What does that say to you when you've accepted pretty much every debate opportunity you had to talk to him, which is actually rare among incumbents? Usually incumbents stay away from debates. You're being willing to do so. What do you think that says about your opponent?
Well, Jim, first of all, I'm very proud of my record, and that's why I welcome an opportunity to talk about the choices that my constituents have in Florida's 26th district. I think that Carlos Gimenez can't defend his record. I think that he knows that he has failed in protecting our community from coronavirus. I know that he realizes that both Republican mayors, city mayors here in the county, and also Democratic city mayors have denounced his failure in leading with this crisis. He was very slow to shut things down. Small businesses then were hurting because he was very slow to reopen things, and he had absolutely no strategy on how to do this. I can tell you that I've had multiple calls from restaurant owners who are so frustrated with the mayor's decision to continue a curfew weeks after things started to reopen, which hurt their businesses, but then at the same time, not providing the proper PPE equipment for transportation workers as things started to reopen. Many of them had to find their own equipment to protect themselves. So he's been a failure. He has a pattern of corruption, and I think that he knows that that's all going to come up in a debate, and he can't defend it.
He says that it's his leadership on the coronavirus that qualifies him to be in Congress. That essentially, he says that he's listened to the scientists, he's made the tough decisions that he had to do. He knows he doesn't please everyone. Is there not some truth to that, though?
He sounds like President Donald Trump saying that he's also been a great leader in this pandemic. And all you need to do is look at the numbers. We had a very small window of opportunity where we could have really crushed the virus and put in place a contact tracing program, expand testing. He failed to do that. I'm very proud of the fact that I actually was able to bring down the first drive-through testing in all of Miami-Dade County. That was in my district, with a partnership with the Community Health Center there, CHI.
What do you believe is at stake in this election?
I think the highest stake that we are facing right now on November 3rd is the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. When I ran in 2018, my top priority was making sure that we expanded access to good quality healthcare, and I have delivered on that. I have brought down significant funding for community health centers that have been able to provide greater access to healthcare. And Donald Trump and the Republicans, from the moment he took office, he brought a lawsuit to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That lawsuit will be heard by the Supreme Court on November 10th. And so with this new nomination to the Supreme Court, we know that all the stakes are against us in protecting 300,000 people living with pre-existing conditions here in Florida's 26th district. Carlos Gimenez has made it very clear that he supports the lawsuit against the ACA that was reported in the Miami Herald. He is right now very nervous that he said that he admitted to supporting the lawsuit, and he's trying to backtrack, but it's too late. We know who he is. He actually cut funding to a department in the county that would provide open enrollment communication for people that wanted to enroll in the ACA. That's his track record. And so the highest stake during a pandemic, what we need to do is protect families' healthcare, protect children who are living with pre-existing conditions. That is my focus. It is my commitment. It is what we need and must do. And unfortunately, the Republicans don't feel the same way. And Carlos Gimenez is following that line.
Now, there has been an issue with regard to continued funding to support those who have lost their jobs, you know, to provide greater benefits down here as well in terms of, you know, helping to open schools, the rest of it. We seem to be at an impasse here. The Democrats initially proposed a $3.2 trillion plan. Republicans initially proposed a $1.2 trillion. The way things currently are, the Democrats are at $2.2 trillion. The Republicans are at $1.8 trillion.
What the Republicans have brought back to the House of Representatives includes significant tax cuts to large companies, but doesn't include child care tax credits for families, for middle-income families. And they don't want any accountability or transparency on how the funding is going to be allocated. If you remember back when we passed the CARES Act, there was significant funding that went to large companies that should have never gone there, that we intended that program to support very small businesses.
Your critics will argue that one of the problems that you have is that some of that PPP money, the payroll protection program, went to a business which your husband is counsel for, $10 million. That's an ad that's currently being run against you. Is that basically your family has profited from that program? How would you address that?
It's completely false, Jim, and I'm glad that I have the opportunity right now to set the record straight. My husband is one of 10,000 employees for a company that right now owns Pollo Tropical here in the state of Florida and other restaurants in the state of Texas. He had absolutely nothing to do with the decision-making on asking for the loan, but they ultimately returned the loan. They never used those funds. And my husband actually, what many people don't know is that he actually had to face a salary cut during this pandemic. And so, no, we have absolutely not benefited. Those are completely false. They're lies. And it's because they are trying to distract voters in Florida's 26th district from the failure that we've seen from Carlos Gimenez and the Republicans. They don't have any plans in place to offer.
The ad that's being run regarding that from an outside group sort of has a actress, I believe, I guess, supposedly portraying you in high heels, doing shopping for jewelry, for handbags, all the rest of it. Do you find that ad sexist?
100%, Jim, 100%. I am a congresswoman. I have worked my entire life to get to a point where I could actually work at a level that I can make an impact to lift up this community. I don't come from politics. For 20 years, I worked in this district in different nonprofit organizations. Most of my career was at FIU, working in healthcare and in education, advocating to get funds for first-generation students because I was able to get a scholarship and I have had those opportunities in the United States. I'm an immigrant. I started working at the age of 15. I've never stopped working since. When you're in Congress, Jim, I'm a mother, right? And I'm traveling back and forth to Washington, D.C., really focusing on what are the issues that I need to advocate for Florida's 26th district. And the little time that I have is to make sure that my kids have what they need for school the next day. It's to make sure that my mother who lives with me, she's 81 years old, is protected during the pandemic. It's sexist, it's offensive, it's a false ad, and that shows you what Gimenez and the Republicans feel about women, that apparently they think that what women do is just go out and shop, and it's insulting. That's why they don't have a lot of representation from women in Congress.
Now, there is an ad in which the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, has been running quite often. It's everyone has seen this ad, attacking Carlos Gimenez and his kids for being corrupt. And there's a scene in the ad in which the FIU bridge collapses. The parents of one of the victims is calling on the DCCC to take that ad down because they find it offensive. And I can understand why they find it offensive. You know, to have to constantly replay the moment where their child was killed by that bridge coming down. Is that ad in bad taste?
Jim, that tragedy that we saw here at FIU, the collapse of that bridge, was a tragedy that should have never happened. And I completely understand how difficult and painful it must be for the families to see those images. Unfortunately, I don't control that ad. It's a third party placing that ad. They wrote the ad, they used those images. I have absolutely no control over that. That would have not come from my campaign.
But do you find that ad to be in bad taste?
The image is very difficult to watch, and but let me say something. I don't know if you remember back in 2018, when I shared the story of my father who had been killed by a criminal with a gun. The NRCC placed an ad right following those ads that really were insulting, shameful, with a man with a gun pointing at the screen. And so we should not have double standards here.
But again, two wrongs don't make a right. If that
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wrong, is this ad wrong as well?
I need to focus on the things that I can control, Jim. Like I said, I had no control over those images or that ad, and that would not have come from my campaign. And my heart breaks for the families that lost their loved ones in that failure of a bridge. And I'm in public service to make sure that I hold people responsible and accountable for the failure of that bridge.
If Jimenez changes his mind and wants to come back on the show, he is more than welcome to do so.